Hi, this is Michael Timmins of Cowboy Junkies, and you are listening to The Mixtape.
Hello and welcome to the Mixtape Podcast. I am your host, Mark, and every week we'll take a deep dive into my guests' inspirations and influences by asking them to make up an imaginary 6-track mixtape. There are over 120 archive episodes. TheMixtapePodcast.com is your one-stop shop for all of those episodes, my YouTube channel, and it'd be great to catch up with you on social media as well. Don't forget, if you enjoy this episode, to give us a like, a share, or a follow wherever you listen to your podcasts. And I hope you enjoy this week's episode. Hello and welcome to today's mixtape. And today on the show, it is an absolute pleasure to welcome Michael Timmins from Cowboy Junkies. How are you, mate?
I'm great, thank you.
Great to have you on this show. Thanks so much for making the time. So we're here talking about Cowboy Junkies coming to Australia, celebrating 40 years. You're playing Sydney, Newcastle, Melbourne, Adelaide, Brisbane. And for Perth people, it is the Astor Theatre on Tuesday, the 18th of November. Cowboyjunkies.com for all the tickets and info. First of all, Michael, 40 years. Does it feel like that long since you first sort of started?
Sometimes.
So sometimes it feels a long time. Sometimes it feels like just yesterday.
It really depends. At the end of a long tour, it feels like 40 years, yes.
Yeah, I'm sure. But you kept it together sort of as a band really well, particularly historically bands with siblings in can be a little bit sort of, what should we say, sort of tempestuous. But you've kept it really together really well as a band. What do you sort of put that down to?
As boring as it sounds, it comes down to communication, and everybody telling each other what's working for them, what's not working for them, because, over 40 years, everything changes in one's life as well as, and so obviously it changes in a band's life too. So, especially when it comes to touring. So letting everybody, each of us know, whether this type of touring isn't working anymore, or we want to tour like this, or how have we changed things up, or, as we in this time of this band, we all got married, we got kids, kids have gone away. So there's lots of changes that have happened. So everybody's had to sort of adjust as we go along. So we've all tried to be as open as we possibly can, to make sure that it's working for each other. And as long as the music stays fun, the creation stays fun, then that's the secret, just communication.
What does a day on tour look like for you, Michael? Especially when you're somewhere like Australia, so far from home, do you like to get out and about and see the sights?
It depends where we are. So if we're in a place like Australia, then which we haven't been to very often, you definitely want to get out and see the sights and get around. It's a fine balance between seeing the sights and having enough energy if you're playing that night for the show. There's a day off for sure. Everybody wants to get out and do things, but a show day, and it depends if there's travel on the show day. Your number one priority is just resting. But when you're in a place like Australia or some country that we haven't been to much, or a city we haven't been to a lot, then you definitely want to, there's a temptation to get out there and see things if there's things to be seen, for sure.
And in the live setting, Michael, like set list wise, what can people expect? So obviously it's going to be something of a career retrospective, given the sort of theme and title of the tour. But do you freshen it up? Do you keep it sort of, fresh? Do you try and slip in like deep cuts or anything like that into the set these days?
It's kind of a combination, I mean, it goes with any of our tours, but especially with this one, we want to make sure it's not just a nostalgia tour. It's definitely a retrospective of all our music, and there's a lot of music over 40 years, so we can't do it all, but we sort of think of our career into different sort of sections, and so we try and make sure that we're touching all those different sections, because we know that people come into the band's life at certain times. Obviously, there's, the very important things like Trinity Session, which we always play. Obviously, we'll play Sweet Jane every night, and we'll play Muscatine Angel. We'll play certain songs every night because we know they're touchstone songs for a lot of people. And then, we don't ignore our new stuff. We definitely dig into that as well. And then a lot of the arrangements are just on some of the songs will be changed up. So, even a familiar song might not sound familiar. So it's sort of a combination. We break down at one point into, an acoustic set or a few songs acoustically. So it's kind of, it's kind of all over the place, but we try and represent the entire catalog in some way.
Just talking about the band's sort of creative process and how you sort of write songs together, has that changed or evolved since the very beginning, or have you sort of stuck to a tried and tested sort of songwriting formula?
It's in a very general sense, it's the same. Like it starts with me sort of it starts with an acoustic guitar, me and my acoustic guitar and a blank piece of paper and a little recorder, and ideas are sort of built from there. And then it kind of, goes in various streams. Usually I'll bring those to Margaret to make sure they're fitting into her key and she'll get familiar with them. And then Pete and Al will come into the equation, and we'll start to build the songs as a band. So that's kind of the way it works. And it'll change up sometimes. Like sometimes Al will send me some musical ideas that I'll work on. So rather than just starting with me and my acoustic, I'll start with some songs that Al sent to me. But generally that's the way it goes. Like it sort of starts with me and then kind of branches out, and then it goes in quite radically different directions once the band gets involved sometimes. So that's kind of the exciting part for me in many ways, and for everybody. But that's kind of the general way we approach it.
40 years in the business, what advice would you give to young sort of up and coming artists today in the music industry?
It's very hard for me at my age. And, I think about, this band started in the mid 80s. So you think of everything that's changed since then. There wasn't even an internet at the time.
Yeah.
CDs were just coming in, vinyl was going out. So it's changed so much. I do think the most, the one thing that has maintained, and I don't think this is even true for everybody, but playing live and getting out there and playing live is, if it doesn't build your career, it's actually, but at least it does is give you an artistic outlet, right? So everybody can go and get a gig, right? So do a lot of that. If you don't like doing that, then I think you have to question what you're doing in the business. But to me, that's sort of the main focus should be of any musician or any musician for sure.
Finally, in this section, Michael, what keeps you motivated and inspired these days? Are there any young bands up and coming that you sort of, you like to catch live?
I was a musician. I was, a music fan, and amazingly inspired by music, right? I mean, hearing certain albums and songs as a young person, changed my life. And I still, so I still have that feeling when I hear certain things or certain songs or certain music, I still get that feeling. So that in turn makes me want to create, and what I turn to is music. And then I hope that, somebody out there every now and then will hear something that I've done. Will then inspire them to carry on that tradition. So it's still that, I just love music. I really love music.
You're listening to The Mixtape.
We're going to drop into a quick fire 5 questions now before we get to your mixtape track choices. These are sort of mainly themed around touring and live shows and stuff like that. What was the first concert you went to, and what was the last concert you went to?
First concert I went to was actually, my mother took me to it. It was Johnny Cash and the Carter Family in Montreal at the Montreal Forum. They played on a square stage in the middle of the arena, and they sort of throughout the night they went around from side to side, side of the square to side of the square, and went all around the arena. So that was the first one. Yeah,
that's not a bad one to kick it off with. Awesome.
Yeah.
And what was the most recent concert you went to?
I think the most recent. I mean, I've seen a few sort of local acts in Toronto. I think the last international or touring act was Kamasi Washington. He's jazz player, tenor sax player, big band, 10-piece band, I guess. And he's sort of one of my favorite artists these days. I love what he does, and he's really outside. His playing, he's a tenor sax player and very Coltrane-ish in some ways. So, but his music is well beyond that. So that's the last big show I saw.
Excellent. And we'll get on to Kamasi Washington when we get to mixtape tracks as well. What is the weirdest thing in your tour rider?
We have the most boring tour rider, especially at our age. we realize more and more we don't consume half of what we have on the rider, and we end up paying for it all anyway. So, we really have very little on our tour rider. I mean, there's a few beers and a couple bottles of wine and more non-alcoholic beer than ever, and some chips and salsa and some sandwich meats. That's basically it. So there's really nothing that's very weird on there at all.
The amount of bands that I speak to who say that now, that they're so conscious of waste and leaving stuff behind and that kind of thing. Yeah.
You walk out of a dressing room and if you don't have the means to take it, or you already have too much stuff, it's like you're leaving behind $150 of stuff.
The best answer I ever had to that was from a band called the Pierce Brothers, and their tour manager used to put loads of like dry goods and tinned food and cereal and stuff in their rider, and then they obviously wouldn't eat it, and then he would stash it away on the tour bus, and then when they got back home, he would take all these boxes of cereal and stuff to the homeless shelter and food banks and stuff, and distribute it like that. Yeah, that was a great one. I thought that was a fantastic way of doing it.
Great.
Do you have a pre-show ritual?
No, we really don't. We don't gather. We don't. It's just there's no real ritual. The only ritual is our stage manager, who happens to be Margot's son at this point. Basically gives us a countdown from the minutes, and that's basically it. So he's young. He's like 21 or 22, so he has lots of energy. So he kind of comes in the dressing rooms and lets us know what's going on, and comes in with energy, and that helps us get up.
And what is your favorite city to play live?
Well, that's hard, Our favorite cities are the ones you haven't played a lot, So, I mean, quite honestly, coming to Australia is so much fun for us because, we've only played it. I mean, the ones that we play a lot are the big cities. It's always exciting to play New York. There's always a sense of, or New York or London, I mean, the big world cities are always exciting to play just because of the energy that they have. And they're not necessarily the best audiences. They're good audiences, but it's just the actual cities themselves, are exciting. So I guess places like that, San Francisco, Chicago is a great city for us, and it's always great to visit there. So I think the big world cities are our favorite cities.
And finally, in this section, if you could time travel to see one concert in history, whose concert would you choose?
I've always said that I really, there's so many, obviously there's so many people I'd like to go see, like Hendrix or whatever. There's so many of that era, but I really would have liked to experience like something like the Duke Ellington big band, that the power of those bands, which are, it's all just air. They're all just blowing. And it's all organic, but the power of it must be amazing to feel it live. And, I don't think we'll ever see those days again, obviously because of the expense of it. But so, yeah, like the Duke Ellington big band of, the 40s and 50s would have been pretty amazing.
You're listening to The Mixtape.
The Mixtape is brought to you in association with Giglist. Giglist is your one-stop shop for all your live events. If you're looking to get out and experience some live music, you can filter by artist, venue, suburb or date. If you are an artist, it will take you less than a minute to list your gig for free on the website. The Mixtape brought to you in association with Giglist. Gigs in a list. All right, let's drop into your mixtape track choices then, Michael. So track one of your mixtape is Pick an Attention Grabber. Kick it off with an attention grabbing track, mate. What did you pick for that?
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure what attention grabbing meant, but I picked Fist of Fury by Kamasi Washington, who I mentioned before. He's just such a strange artist. Like that song in particular, it starts with this very strange sort of almost Wu-Tang Clan-ish references in it, and then goes into this kind of corny vocals, and then it breaks into this amazing outside piano solo, and then Kamasi takes over on his tenor and sort of goes off into space with it. And it's just really an amazing track. It has all these loops in it, and so you would call it jazz, but it's so much more than that. And the production on that is so amazing.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic track, and it does for sure fit the category of attention grabber. And that was one of those for me that, like so many bands and artists over the years, I was introduced to through the later with Jules Holland TV show. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that or if you've ever been on it.
We have, you know,
Yeah,
I didn't know he's played it. I have to look that up.
yeah, it's a great one. Yeah, and I've been introduced to so many artists through that show over the years. Yeah, it's sort of a British institution for sure. Second track of your mixtape, Michael. What is a song that you sing in the car or the shower?
I think my answer was anything off of the Jesus Christ Superstar song. You're right. For some strange reason, that record entered our family's life, like when it came out, I guess in 1970 or early 70s, and we must have played that album as a family, like as the kids, 100 times. And I think we even put on little, we did our own little musicals to it. So I think I'm not very good with remembering lyrics, but I think I could sing every single song on that. So to pick Hawaii's song, I picked Pilot's Dream, which is short. It's about an hour and a half. It's about a minute and a half, and it's it's the introduction of Pontius Pilate to the play, and I don't know. I drive my kids crazy. If you guess, I'm always breaking into these stupid songs for that record, and they're just ingrained in my brain, and I can't escape them. The good thing is my wife is actually very influenced by it too. So every Easter we like to give a little cause to our children.
Excellent choice, mate. And track 3 for your cover version, Michael. It was pick a cover version.
Yes, I picked Song to the Siren by This Mortal Coil. It's a Tim Buckley song that This Mortal Coil did. They were that 4AD sort of, compilation of many artists put together by Ivo, the head of 4AD. And, that cover of that song, the Tim Buckley song by itself is very haunting, but This Mortal Coil took it and sort of ramped up the hauntingness of it. And Liz Fraser's vocals on it are beautiful. She goes with Tim Buckley's vocal melody, but really accentuates it and takes it in a different area. And I remember hearing it for the first time, just being really blown away by it. Not really recognizing it as a Tim Buckley song at the time. I wasn't overly familiar with Tim Buckley, but that might have even turned me on to him, hearing that version.
I'm so surprised that's the first time that song's been picked. I think you'll be episode 126 of the show, and that's one of the greatest cover versions of all time, and it's never been picked until now. Phenomenal cover. I think it's one of those where you can say she's really sort of made it her own, and it's one of those that, like you say, you don't recognize it as a Tim Buckley track because she owns it. Do you know what I mean? Like a vocal on that is incredible.
It's faithful too. The beauty of it, it's also faithful, right? Like if you listen, just when you got this question, I went to listen to it, and I again, and then I listened right after I listened to Tim Buckley's version. And I said, okay, well, it's there, right? That's the beauty of it. She just takes it away, but it's all there. Like the song is buried in that, and it's just beautiful. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, I think a natural follow-up question that I normally go with on that choice is what makes a good cover version for you. But I think you've nailed it there. Is like being faithful to the original, but also make it your own as well, which sounds easy, but it isn't. Yeah, it's one of the hardest things to do, I think. Definitely, great choice. Just side note, Robert Plant does an amazing cover version of that as well.
I could hear that. I can hear that now.
Yeah. I used to have a CD single back in the day, and it was a B-side. But I'm sure you can find it on YouTube. But it's a really, really good version. Yeah, it's fantastic.
I'll look for it.
All right.
Yeah.
Track 4. What is a song you wish you could play to your 18-year-old self?
Well, I took this from both a point of view of an 18-year-old brain, and also where the year when I was 18, it was 1978. So at that time I was, being very swayed and very moved, and my life has been changed by the punk movement coming out of London and New York. I was in Toronto, which had a really good punk movement at that time too, but if I could play that 18-year-old something that was coming down the pipe, I picked Public Enemy's "Don't Believe the Hype," but you could pick any Public Enemy song. I know that 18-year-old brain would have been blown, because if I thought I was listening to aggression when I was listening to The Clash, well, listen to this. Listen to Public Enemy, and you're going to hear aggression, and you're going to hear grievance, and you're going to hear politics, and and you're going to hear sounds that you have no idea how they're being made, like the actual recording itself, the way they approach music, the way they approach, just oral sensation is phenomenal. And Chuck D's vocals are, they're second to none, I think.
That's got a special place for me, that record, Nation of Aliens. I remember hearing that for the first time. I was on a school trip to London Zoo back in the day, and a couple of us, like 3 or 4 of us, were sat at the back of the bus, and one of the lads had a cassette on his Walkman of Nation of Millions, and we sort of took turns sharing the headphones to his Walkman all the way to London Zoo, just having our minds blown by his record. It was a real moment for me of like, because I was into sort of 80s pop at the time, do you know what I mean? That's what I was listening to, and hearing that for the first time was just, it shook me and inspired me, and in all sorts of...
That still does, right?
Yeah, that's the beauty of it.
Still listen to it and you go, holy shit, man, this is so still ahead of its time. It's still there's still something about the energy of those tracks. It's like that whole record and the one before it too. The energy is just I don't know how they captured it. It's just like, holy crap, it's just amazing.
Yeah, I think the way the album kicks off as well, it's that live at Hammersmith with the siren and everything, and just
sirens.
Yeah, I just wondered like what it would feel like to be in that crowd. That's what I was thinking at the time. Well, that must have been amazing being in there, that crowd. And for us as well, as for like young teenage boys in London, like hearing like that band in London, like it really resonated with us. Yeah, for sure, that's a great choice. I think it was a good one. Track 5. What is a song you would put on your mixtape for a romantic interest?
Well, I was a big mixtape maker back in the day, and that was back in the days of cassette. You had a cassette deck and you had a turntable, and you had to take a long time to make a mixtape. So the mere fact of making a mixtape was, it meant you're serious. But there's lots of tracks. I ended up going with the Sparkle Horse song off the first record, Heart of Darkness. It's just a beautiful track. Every song, you can pick lots of songs on that record for a mixtape. If my romantic interest wasn't moved by that song and Mark Lynx's vocal and the production, then I think my interest would have waned.
I've told this story a few times on the show, but I met my partner now. We've been together 4 years, and we met on a dating app. And this particular dating app, you can look at each other's. You can link your Spotify, and it shows on your profile, it shows your top 10 most listened to artists. And that was what I was looking at when I was swiping. I don't mind what people look like, or do you know what I mean? What they do for a living or anything like that. I was just going straight to that and judging people on that, because that's what I do.
Yeah, for sure. Well, funny, same with my wife. We've been married now for over 30 years. And I think the reason we stayed together was because I think she knows more about music than I do. It's like, so that's how we connected. And so sure, it's very important. Right?
Yeah, no, it is absolutely. And finally, to finish off your mixtape, I asked you to pick a deep cut, a B-side, or an album track that you feel is underappreciated.
So this is from one of my favorite artists, Mark Kozalik of Sun Kill Moon, and this is that song I think was Carissa off his album Benji. And I just think he's brilliant. I don't think he gets enough attention. I think he's a bit of a curmudgeon, so he probably doesn't look for the attention. But this album, Sun Kill Moon came out with that first album, Ghosts of the Highway or whatever, which is really beautiful and but kind of reminiscent. You sort of understood it and you could hear it, and had some Neil Young influences and here and there. But then when he came out with Benji, it's sort of like this. He started this whole new way of singing, like these weird narratives, and it's kind of rapping. It's kind of just narration, and then is mixed into all these beautiful choruses that are very heartfelt and simple and beautiful and just really original. So this whole record, I just love. The song Carissa is it's really a heartbreaking song about I think a true story of one of his cousins who oddly got blown up in a fire. Somebody threw a can of whatever into a fire and it blew up and killed her. So it's a very sad song, but it's quite kind of amazing that he could put that into a song. I just love the approach he takes to his lyrics.
Yeah, I think Sun Kill Moon are one of those bands. I think they're like, if you know, you know. Like whenever I meet someone and they talk about Sun Kill Moon, I'm like, we can be friends straight away. Do you know what I mean? Like it's just like they're one of those bands, I think. And I remember back in the 90s, there's a radio station in London called then it was called XFM. Now it's called Radio X, and it started out as a pirate station. But just after they went legit, on a weekend morning, they used to have guest DJs come in, and like musicians. So I remember Bob Geldof used to do it quite often. And this one show, it was Damon Albarn from Blur. And in the 90s, I was firmly in the Oasis camp because you had to be one or the other. And I couldn't stand Damon Albarn. I thought he was pretentious and, whatever, and all these other things that Liam and Noel told me that he was. And he came on and he was talking about this song that he was going to play, and, the way he was talking about it, like you could just tell he was just so in love with this song. And it was Song for a Blue Guitar by Red House Painters, which is obviously the band that Mark Cassette was in before, and that just turned me on to that band and him massively, and I sort of had to start liking Damon Albarn after that because he turned me on to such an amazing artist. I'll never forget that moment. I was at work listening to it on the radio and just stopped me in my tracks. That Red House Painter song, because it is amazing.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Michael, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you, mate. Safe travels down under.
Yeah.
Can't wait to see you. It is the Astor Theatre in Perth, Tuesday the 18th of November. Cowboyjunkies.com for all the tickets and info. Thanks, mate. Safe travels, and I'll see you later. Thank you, mate.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for listening to the Mixtape Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to go to the top of the page and rate it 5 stars. Or give us a like or follow on social media at the Mixtape Podcast and radio show. Don't forget, there's over 100 archive episodes just waiting to be discovered. And all you need to do is visit themixtapepodcast.com. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.